Hi, my name's Gareth Davies, and the coolest shit I've ever done is I built a website for a hockey team.
Make it happen, do the thing. Fly your flag and let your bell ring. Get down to it. Do more cool shit.
Welcome back, my creative nerds. This is the Do More Cool Shit podcast. I'm your host, Sean McDonnell, and you're listening to episode 54, where I get to have an amazing conversation with Gareth Davies of MakerHouse. But of course, before we get into that, I always want to look back, and then we want to look forward into what's coming up. So if you haven't had a chance yet to go back and listen to episode 53, I think you got to go do that, because it's all about how your goal setting sucks, and you can't get anywhere, you can't move forward if you don't have the right goals in life. Or if you don't know how to set those right goals. And I think that I talk a lot about how to do it, how not to do it, and how you should be changing the methods in which you set your goals so that you can move forward in your creative endeavors. Of course, looking forward, August 5th, the next episode will be coming out. And I want to talk a little bit about a few steps to pricing your work. I want to get right into the nitty-gritty of how to price your work, how to price what you're worth. I think it's a topic that we don't talk a lot about. I think people often shy away from, but I think we have to dive into it. You know, we've talked about building up your confidence. We've talked about, believing in yourself, setting your goals, and all that kind of stuff. And after today's conversation, I hope if you listen to the conversation I'm about to have with Gareth of MakerHouse, where we're talking about how to prepare yourself for selling your cool shit, I hope that you then can take the next steps to, okay, great, I've made all this stuff. I believe in myself enough to make a few little things. And now I want to be able to get out there and I want to sell it. I want to make some money. You know, who the hell doesn't want to make some money? But on this episode today, episode 54, I have an awesome opportunity to have this conversation with Gareth, who himself is very creative and is obviously an entrepreneur opening up a store called MakerHouse here in Ottawa, Ontario. But more than that, even more than that, he gets to, over the last 8 years, almost 9 now, moving into that decade mark, he's had a chance to work with over 500 plus creatives, makers, people that are making stuff and selling stuff. He's had a chance to work with 500 of you folks out there. If you're listening to this, you're probably a creative. You're probably someone who wants to get into making stuff and wants to make a living doing this. And Gareth gets into the nitty-gritty of it. We talk about everything from, checking your ego at the door to pricing your work a little bit, to preparing yourself to be able to approach a store. And we talk about small steps. We talk about how you need to keep learning. And all of that stuff is so interesting, so fascinating. I hope that a lot of it will resonate with you and motivate you. We talk about risk taking and how to even just prepare yourself to take risks and how to learn from some of your failures as well as some of your successes. Gareth, like I said, has had a chance to work with over 500 different creators and makers, and the lessons that he has now after doing this for so long and with so many people, I think is so fascinating. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to see you at the other end, but please give this a listen. Of course, I always want to know what you're working on, so please go visit domorecoolshit.com. If you're liking anything about this podcast, drop it a rating. We always appreciate that. It helps us keep making more, helps us approach other people so that we can keep creating and making and bringing these conversations to you. So I appreciate you guys, but let's listen in now to that conversation that I had with Gareth Davies. That's a great, wow. Okay, so I'm sitting here with Gareth Davies, and, he's a website builder.
Yeah.
That's what I learned. Do you want to tell us more about it? Why is that the coolest shit you've ever done? Why is the coolest shit you've ever done is something that everybody does now?
Well, it's up there. We can decide if it's the coolest, but it came to mind when I was thinking about cool things. I was only like 15 years old at the time. This was like early internet days.
Okay.
So I was using, it was either GeoCities or maybe Tripod. I built a few websites actually back in the day.
Okay.
This wasn't my first website. I cut my teeth on MP3 websites. Before Napster, I was building I had a Lava MP3, which was just my own mix of things. I had a MP3 website for the Much Music Countdown. You could get the weekly top 30.
Okay.
And of course, I'd have to go find the thing and then upload it to my GeoCities site. But this one was like the pinnacle of my website building back in the day.
The pinnacle.
Yeah. It was for it wasn't just any hockey team. It was the Canadian Olympic hockey team.
So you had been contracted $1 million?
Yeah, they put it out to tender.
They put it to tender. And
You
they're
see
like,
what I did there?
let's get this 15-year-old from where to build this website?
From Kingston.
From Kingston.
Good hockey town.
Yeah. Right. You're close to Waterloo.
I was just messing around. I was a big sports fan, and basically I set it up with like a nice ice background, carved, skated ice. Like you did the ice tiles. In real life, I had ice tiles on my website.
Okay.
Make it seamless like that. It's a great hack, by the way. You can just tile your background. I don't know if you website builders out there are using this.
This is new information for 2024.
I also used tables at the time.
Tables, okay.
Newer technology for websites. So I built the roster in a nice table format. Maybe you could click the name and look at the bio for the Martin Brodeur, or some of these with Steve Yzerman, some of these big players. I don't know if you've heard of Wayne Gretzky before. So
just once, yeah.
I was getting emails from people. The website was so well done that they thought it was the official website for the Canadian Olympic hockey team.
That's hilarious.
Because the actual website sucked.
That's hilarious.
So I had like family members of players, and I remember like Mark Crawford was the coach, and his cousin was like, "Hey, Mark's my cousin. Can you pass this message on to him? Tell him like, go get the gold over in Nagano, Japan."
And you're like, "I'll send it right along."
I'm like, actually, I'm just a 15-year-old kid, but I'll do my best.
Wait, did you tell people that online? I feel like you shouldn't tell. Well, was those back in the days when everybody was just like, "Yeah, we're online."
More innocent back in the day.
And now you're like, "Don't tell anybody anything." All right, so you built a website. That's pretty awesome. That actually is pretty awesome.
I built a few websites.
Yeah, you built a few websites. That's pretty cool.
Peak of my website building, and then like I didn't keep up with any code beyond that, and like 10 years later, I was like, oh, I wish I could build a better website now, but everything's changed.
Yeah, everything has changed. Everything's changed, and your life changed, and now you're the proud owner of MakerHouse.
Yeah, I started MakerHouse 2015.
Yeah.
When I turned 33 on our opening day, so I guess 18 years later. Quick math there.
Yeah. There you go, 18 years.
Cool stuff in between as well.
No, I know. Nobody's here. We're not judging you. It's all good.
You don't know how many cool things I've done.
We're not going to rank you there. But I was really excited to have you on today because I'm fascinated by the story of how you've got to where you are, and owning a retail store and getting to work with over 250 now, I think, right? Unless the numbers changed since last I heard. Like, that's the thing that I find interesting is like you yourself are creative. Opening the store was is a creative adventure, but even more so, like working with 250 creators and more over the years, right? Like, do you have an idea of like, now I know you carry 250 plus. But do you have an idea of like, is it 300 people, 400, 500 makers?
Kind of cycled through, we're typically adding at least 50 new ones every year, and even last year, and the store's kind of full, and we're like, how are we gonna add more makers? But there's always things that didn't sell as well, so they cycle out, and so it's definitely it's got to be upwards of maybe 500,
right? And that's over eight years,
of
right?
People, because you have community partners. We've run a lot of events over the years, like. We're just getting back into workshops in the store now, but we did a lot of DIY workshops before COVID, and we hosted a lot of parties. We would get like a liquor license for the store for one day and bring in like Dominion City Brewing or our neighbors at Tooth and Nail and pour beer samples, and our customers would get a little imbibed and then like whip out the credit card, spend a little more money. It was a really good business model.
It was great. It's good. Liquor up your customers. If you're an artist or a creator out there, that's good advice.
I mean,
liquor up
keep it simple, folks. You don't need to reinvent the wheel.
I like it. That's good advice.
Give your customers liquid courage.
Liquor them up. That's good. And then so Maker has been open for 8 years now, right? Or close to it. You're almost. You're on year 9, right?
Almost, be 9 this year.
Yeah.
Coming up on the Big 10 next year.
Yeah. And it started as that's the other thing that I think was really cool about that whole story was it started as a pop-up, right?
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like, I've got this store idea, we're opening the store, we're going, it's like, hey, I got this idea and we're going to loosely start I love the pop-up idea.
It worked out really well. And I wanted to start a business that obviously would sustain. Like I spent a couple of years with the business plan, and really that last like 6 to 12 months seriously planning out what we thought would happen with it. But the pop-up was part of the model to launch so that we could test it, right? We ended up in a big space, and that was expensive, but it was available, and it had been sitting there for a while here in Hintonburg, sort of east end of Wellington West, right before it becomes Somerset Street. So it was just vacant. It was like the quieter part of Hintonburg at the time. And now, obviously, in the last 8 years, there's been tons of great new businesses there. Yeah. Credit to like Hintonburg Public House, by the way, which was like the first one on the block a couple of years before us. So got the space, couldn't afford like a 5-year lease there without any track record. Right. But I had gone to them, 6 months, a year prior, and they were like, no, we're looking for a long-term tenant. And by the time I was ready to launch the fall of 2015, they were like, yeah, okay, we'll do something short term. Yeah. So credit to our landlord as well for thinking outside the box and recognizing like
taking a chance.
Getting a short 3-month lease at like half the market rent led to them having me signed for 5 years in the new year and now renewed for another 8 years. Like, we're not going anywhere. Yeah. So it worked out for them as well. And we could market to our customers that we're a pop-up, but we called ourselves a pop-up to permanent. So basically, what does that mean? Well, if you support us, if you drop some money on Christmas gifts here, then
we'll stay.
We hopefully hit our goal. We'll stay. Yeah, we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, I love that. Because that's one thing that I'm always talking about with creatives is like, you don't have to. Like, can you start small and like, that's not starting small. I mean, that was still a store, but like without starting with like a 5-year commercial lease that like for your first time ever.
Give yourself an out.
What a great opportunity. Yeah. Like, I mean, if it didn't work, you could have walked away.
Yeah. 100%. Or just gone back to like a smaller location.
Yeah. Right.
I looked at the range from, just being online, like just starting with an e-commerce, which would have been, in hindsight, like now I know how hard it is to grow sales online for lots of reasons. Yeah.
You were really banking on your GeoCities.
And that would have been, I was like, I know how to build a good website.
I build websites. I know how to do this.
Think of the tables.
I don't need these bricks and mortars.
Tables full of tables, dining tables.
Oh, yeah, there you go. That's clever.
Really layering it on.
I like that.
Yeah. I'm also, a dad now, so I got like really good dad jokes last
year. No, that's good. Yeah, they've really ramped up. I've known Gareth both before dad and after dad, and I feel like the dad jokes era has really ramped up now. So
it's my dad era.
I don't know if that's good or bad, but it just is.
Yeah. And the cool shit I'm doing lately is more focused on like family time.
Yeah.
I like to think I've gone through eras of coolness, starting with maybe the website thing, or even before that when I was like under 10 years old, the coolest thing might have been getting like the Batman logo in my haircut, like that was pretty cool.
No, for sure. That's a cool thing. For sure.
For sure, right? Everybody. At the time, trust me.
Yo, you were the coolest kid on the playground, I'm sure.
I wouldn't believe the looks I got of, people being, I think, impressed.
Do you ever think about doing it now?
Sometimes.
You're like, just one day, just like pull off your bike helmet and be like, bam.
Exactly.
Check that out.
Just don't mention it.
Check that out, everybody.
Check for reactions.
Yeah. Yeah, if you didn't tell anybody, don't tell your wife or anything.
I might not do the Batman logo, though. I feel like there's something more relevant now. Maybe the MakerHouse logo.
Yeah, oh my God.
Just shameless. Yeah. But the website model wouldn't have taken off. Like our revenue from in-store is still 80% of what we sell on an annual basis. Yeah.
What's the whole experience?
And that's with like COVID pushing people online and us investing in the website and doing Facebook ads.
Right.
So we wouldn't have grown nearly as quickly. I looked at a space at Makerspace North. For those who remember, at City Center, there was this like 20,000 square foot hub where businesses could incubate and network with each other. So I was just going to pop up a shack in there.
Right.
I guess when I'm not at my day job, I can be here on evenings and weekends and meet customers. And like, again, that would have been a huge struggle. Like, people would be like, where are you? I can't find you. Like, I'm here at the warehouse, but are you around the back?
Just working 9 to 5, just I got my day job. Pipe down. I'm trying to run this radio station over here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I used to work in radio before MakerHouse, but I was able to get the big lease for the big space, and then I left my job, and 10 days later, after some quick renovations with an amazing group of friends and family, we opened the doors, and thankfully I haven't had to look back.
Yeah, it's been pretty cool. So when we were talking a little bit about one thing that I'm interested in, and I think folks here will be interested in, because we get a lot of creatives and makers that are listening along, and they're trying to like start their own little businesses. And what a great opportunity to be able to join an already flourishing business. I'm always curious, what's the business side? Like what makes some creators really good as business people and some people like just suck at it. You know, like there's a lot of makers that make really well and I'm like, wow, your talent is amazing, but your economics and your business sense suck.
Yeah.
So like I'm sure you've had a lot of experience with people both getting in and people not getting in.
Yeah.
So what makes people get into the store, you know?
Well, the answer is sadly boring, right? It's like that is the business side of things, being organized, like having a good brand, having good packaging, understanding what's a good price point for people, what's the value that people expect for your type of product. Like, I'll give you an example. We've been trying to bring in dog treats to the store because we are a dog friendly shop. People bring in their pups in all the time, and we give them treats like that we just buy, like what are those bones called, those like
but they're just not called bones. I think you're referring to dog bones.
No, they're like something bone treats. It's like,
I don't know. I think we're gonna say dog bones though for the experience of expediency. If we all understand dog bones. Okay, yeah.
But they're treats. Anyways, we're not here to advertise like the shitty treats that you get.
That's right. We want good homemade ones.
Yeah, we have good dog treats now that we've brought in. We found a good brand. Yeah. But it was hard to find one that like could fit into like a reasonable price point, but was locally made. Right. And also like the right size pack. We don't need like a bulk pack that's going to be expensive. We're looking for a lot of things bought as gifts at our store, so it's usually going to be a smaller package, a smaller price point. So that took a while to find, whether it was about like the branding wasn't there, the packaging, or the price point wasn't there. So hitting those key business elements is probably the biggest differentiator between a creator who can turn it into a business, particularly a retail facing product based business, or wholesale selling to retailers who are then gonna resell it, versus those who are really talented but never get over the hump of creating a sustainable business through sales. Also understanding wholesale, like if you want to sell through stores, understanding that you're basically selling at 50% of the retail cost, and so the economics of that have to make sense. It doesn't for a lot of creators, because half the time they don't even know how much time it takes to create the thing they're making, whatever it is. It could be like soap or
figure that out.
T-shirts.
Figure out how long it takes you,
there.
right? Like how many hours are you putting in, and how many, like what's your hourly job? Like, if you're going to leave a $22 hourly job to do this, are you going to make $22 or even closer?
$10 an hour. Like you are legally allowed to pay yourself less than minimum wage, but do you really want to make less than minimum wage? Can you afford to make less than minimum wage? So factor in how long it takes you to make, X bars of soap. What if I make double that? Is the time the same per bar? Is it less per bar? So wrap your head around some of those numbers of the labor that it takes to make the product. Obviously, your ingredient costs, your hard costs, and there are other peripheral expenses like overhead. You might have a studio that you're paying rent on. You might have equipment that you need to buy. So get all those inputs, and it'll help you determine your costs, and then decide, can I sell at 50% of the projected retail, the MSRP, and still make money? Because if a store's selling it for $10, they're probably going to pay you $5. And then hopefully your cost is around, $3 or maybe even a bit less. So you're making $2 per unit. And hopefully within that, that's some profit for you, because again, you're selling it for $5, and you've got to cover all your labor, your ingredients, your equipment within that pretty low price point. So retail's not for everybody. Wholesale selling through stores is not for everybody. Sometimes it's good to develop a brand direct through craft shows, through your own website. Maybe you could do a pop-up. Maybe you could collaborate with other makers somehow, and get some direct sales at a higher margin. Because because you're not going through a middleman, so to speak, like a retailer.
Yeah, it's a lot. I think that's why it's so good. I hope everybody took your notes because I think it is so important that like as creators and as makers, you don't just get enthralled with making the pie. You know, it's like how, like if you're going to open up a bake shop, you know, it's more than just making the pie. And same thing with like getting, like you said, getting into stores and like knowing the math and knowing all that stuff. And I think there's a reality check there of how do you make stuff work? How does a creator make stuff work? And we talk a lot about, you know, people always talk about the magic of making stuff and the magic of having a business and stuff. And I mean, that, you know, I'm always pushing back. I'm like, there's no magic. It's a lot of work and there's a lot of math and you know, and you gotta make economics work. And you know, I'm constantly fighting with creatives who are like, oh, but I want to charge this small point because I just love doing it. I'm like, I know, but I want you to do it for 10 years.
And they're like, I know what I would spend on this, so I think other people would spend the same.
Yeah,
and a lot of creators undersell their stuff.
Yeah,
and we can educate them on like, you know, actually the market would probably pay this, and that means we could pay you this. And I don't know your economics, but you tell us if that works for you.
Do you find you educate well, like especially now that you've been doing it for 8 years, are you educating a lot of creators now around like that price point is just not it's not going to work for you? Or
we give feedback, like try to be as honest as possible. I think that's a value we can provide even if we don't end up working together.
Right.
It does feel like a bit of a duty we have given the platform that MakerHouse has become and the credit that we get and the support we get from our customers and from makers who work with us.
Right.
So we definitely give people the time of day. Like if they're going to apply to sell stuff with us, we let them know whether it's a fit or not and try to give them feedback, particularly if they're asking for it. Sometimes people aren't interested in feedback as well, right? And they're like, no, thanks. Like, you don't want me. I don't want to hear from like what you think. Right. Which is not a great business practice either, because like every bit of constructive feedback is going to help you. Whether that means like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be looking at retail, or I should look at a different kind of store. Right. So there's lots to gain from just communication.
Well, and just working. You know, we're all working together. You know, like I think I watched an interview you did a long time ago with the Happy Ever Crafter.
Yeah,
this was like a couple 3 years ago, and I think that was a great episode. And it was like 5 tips for makers. And one of them was talking about like collaborating and working together nicely. And you know, I think I have a funny story around that actually. When you said that, so I always get graphic design, videographer, students, stuff like that come in, and man, it's so funny to me. This young woman sent me an email and was like, I know it was just like a template email of like, hello, sir or ma'am.
I'm reaching out to see if you're interested to work with me.
Yeah, exactly.
And I always like, did they use the word MakerHouse anywhere?
No.
Did they use my name?
Did they use my name? Did they use the business name?
Is this just the BCC?
Yeah. So, you know, I get that one and I'm like, oh my God, okay, so this is funny. And I look at the designs and they're great designs, you know. So this particular woman was a graphic designer. And I'm like, this is nice. These are nice designs. It's not the style of things that we do, you know, but it's still good. But it's just not the style of stuff that we make. So I sent her that feedback. I was like, I appreciate you applying. I think this is really great. You know, I wish you well.
Like you're talented.
Yeah, super talented. It's just not the style that we use. If you take a look at our website, you'll see that, you know, we use this style and that style and blah, blah. And
you get that for books sometimes. They're like, I wrote a novel. And we're like, we don't sell novels. We sell a very narrow range of books. Yeah.
And so I gave her this feedback, and within like 10 minutes, I'm sure I got an email back and was like, you wouldn't know style if it hit you in the ass. Blah, blah. Like, you're creative stuff sucks. And and I was like, whoa. I was like, oh God. I was like, I'm just saying I don't want to work with you. It's fine. Like, it's okay. Like
throwing Molotov cocktails.
I think I had even suggested, I was like, oh, there's some other, like, here's other businesses that I work with that I think probably would be really interested in your style.
Yeah.
You know? And she came back and was just like super harsh. And I was like, whoa. I was like, all right.
You're like, now you're on my shit list.
So, you know, a week later, I'm sitting at lunch with another friend of mine who owns a graphic design agency, and we're chit-chatting, and he's like, oh, I just got this email from this woman. Her name is blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, I'm just going to tell you what happened to me, because this is the woman that emailed me. And I was like, I'm just going to tell you.
It's my experience.
I was like, and he was like, okay, well, I think that's going to help me not.
Right. May not be responsive to feedback,
like,
for example.
Wow. I was like, wow, like.
You never know when you're going to shoot yourself in the foot, right?
Think about your ego, like, just chill your ego a little bit,
Yeah.
It's like, I think that's really important for creators, and I'm sure over the
It's
course
hard
of
not to
8
take
years.
it personal, right? Because it's like you probably poured your heart and soul into it,
Right.
but recognize that that feedback isn't about you. It's actually
Yeah,
about the market and
Right.
the store or whoever you're trying to collaborate with.
Right. Have you had to deal with that, like yourself personally, like ego? Like I know definitely doing this for like 20 years, I've had to check my ego more than once, where I'm like, oh, I actually don't know it.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that's hard the first time you go through it.
Yeah.
Facing any challenges where you're like, oh, I may have failed at something, or I could have done that better. But yeah, if you can learn and grow from it, then I find like as long as you're kind of doing your best and you don't feel like you've purposely misstepped, I guess. Like then you can sleep at night, right? And recognize that like I didn't burn a building down. Nobody's dying on my watch here.
Right.
I made a mistake. I should probably apologize if I haven't.
Sure.
What's the next steps? Lay out like what's going to be different, or even just internally know what I would do differently next time. So as long as those elements are in place, or they happen when something goes wrong, I tend not to carry it with me. Yeah, I think at some point in my 20s, early 30s, I got a good life lesson from my uncle, actually, that kind of hammer home probably something that was gradually, I think we all gradually learned, is that like we're not that important. People don't care that much about us as individuals because they're so wrapped up in their own lives.
Can you say that again? That's a very important message we harp on here.
Yeah, like
just tell the people
you're not that important.
You're not that important.
People are generally like, you're like, oh, should I wear these shoes? Or like, oh, my socks are different today. And like, no one's going to notice. No one's going to care. If they do notice, then they may think you're quirky and cool, whatever, but they're probably not going to notice. I got that lesson because I had a new job and I was starting the next day. And actually my brother, I have an older brother, he's like 10, 11 years older. He was visiting from BC and Kingston, and we went out for a bender, and I was starting my new job the next day.
Okay,
and I'm a lightweight,
so
I essentially like woke up hungover. Awful. Like this isn't me, okay? Like this is not my character.
He's matured. He's matured. He doesn't do that anymore.
Yeah, you can still hire me. But basically, I was so like anxious about the fact that I actually did have to call in sick for my first day.
Yeah.
I was
my God.
talking to my uncle like later that afternoon.
Wait, you had to call in sick for your first day of the new job?
The new job because I was hungover.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah, this is like the least coolest shit that I've ever done because I was like rock bottom.
Well, we also have a path of do less dumb shit, so maybe we'll put that
just
there.
spin that off a little bit. So my uncle, who I called like, about life events like this, and he's like, Gareth, calm down. He's like, you're not that important. They're not going to miss you.
Yeah, they don't care.
You will start your new job tomorrow.
Right.
And
right. Yeah, you're the new guy.
Something about just that moment and that message was like, oh, you're right. Like, again, like I'm not a doctor who's like, oh, I missed the brain surgery today.
Right. You're like, they don't care.
No, they're probably like, good, I have more time to prepare for orientation.
Sweet, I didn't have to train this dude.
Exactly. Yeah. So just recognize that like what feels super important and is worrying you and keeping you up at night is probably not that important to other people.
I love that. I have told most of these people this so many times. Like, just do the things like get
out of your own way.
Just get out of your own way. Get out of your own way. 100%. Oh my God, that's amazing. Thank you. What a great. I didn't tell him to pay. I didn't pay him to say that.
Yeah, it certainly aligns with your worldview. I know you're like, just do the thing. It doesn't need to be perfect.
Yeah.
Do it. Get it out.
Push it out,
and then do the next thing. Move on.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so funny. I can't. That's really funny. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
Sorry, that's really good.
Well, going back to your question about like what differentiates makers who can sell or make it a business. Our whole model is built on the fact that makers prefer to be making things and not be selling things. Yeah. So you actually don't.
That's why your store exists.
That's why MakerHouse exists, because we sell it for you. And instead of, people might be asking like, why would I sell it at half price? instead of full price.
Right,
Like I'm going to sell
right.
it at full price.
Right.
But the benefits of selling it at wholesale to a store or like us or any other store would be you're selling in bulk, first of all. So there's some scale to that. Like you would have a minimum to get that deal, right? You can't just be like, I want one at wholesale, and it's actually just for me. I don't have a store. Can I do that? No, no, you can't do that. No, you need to buy like 10 or 20 or a $500 minimum order, or sometimes it's higher.
Right.
So there's that benefit of scale. It's also a recurring order, so it's not just a one-time thing.
Right.
Hopefully it sells and they want to reorder.
Yeah.
So there's those benefits, but they also do the sales and marketing, right?
Right.
So you just have to take it to the point where you've got your packaging and your branding, and that includes like your labels, and if you're doing something where you need ingredients, like cover those bases.
Yeah.
It's good to have a website so that people can check you out.
Right.
But it doesn't need to be even like an e-commerce website. If you don't want to be selling directly, or you don't want to have like
just a showcase,
a Facebook page where you're doing ads and selling again, it's just a showcase. It's just a catalog.
Right.
So wholesale offers the chance to focus on your craft and outsource or partner with other retailers who will go and chase the business and find the customers, and sell your stuff and then order more of it.
Yeah.
So that's the benefit of doing wholesale, and it means you don't have to worry about like, how am I going to talk to people, or how am I going to create an advertisement or like a deal that people are going to buy. Like
you don't have to worry about any of that.
You
just got to make stuff.
Good enough value for the retailer to see they can do that.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's good. That's good. I mean, and I hope, I think people need like more artists, more creators, everybody needs that kind of thing. Not everybody. A lot of people need it because, like you said, like they just want to make.
Well, you can't do it all.
You just want to make, right? I think this is that's a great support.
There are creators that are well-rounded, and they're like, I'm happy, I'm outgoing, and I'm organized, and I'd like to be doing the sales side of things. But that's also time you're not making stuff.
Right.
So you probably could make and sell more things. You theoretically should be selling more things if you're focused on your craft as opposed to being out there in the market selling things.
Right. No, that's all good points. All good points. What gave you the superpower? Because lots of people think that, I'd like to open up a store. I'd like to be a business person, or I'd like to and I'm always trying to figure out like what gave you the confidence to be able to do any of that stuff, Because I feel like there's so many people that struggle with confidence, and I'm always curious what individuals, like, where did you get yours from?
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty deep question. I think that confidence in like how a business works and how I could like create a successful model built up over time. I wanted to open my own business since I was like 18. I thought that would be a good path to be an entrepreneur. Maybe just the creativity of it, right? And like building something from scratch. That's exciting. And also having the flexibility or the control to be the boss, right? And make decisions. All those things are appealing. But I also recognize like that's a pretty big risk, and I have to pay myself. I have to write my own paycheck. And so I need a model that would work. So for about like 10 years, I would just like write down ideas or share them with friends. And lots of people, I think, feel that way. They're like, I'd love to do that one day.
Sure, yeah.
But I just kind of took my time on the side writing ideas and running them by people and not actually leaping into it or even developing a full business plan.
Right.
But while I was doing that, I was working in real day jobs, and I was gaining experience from, the nonprofit sector to working for the federal government to shifting over to a sales career. And the sales career is where I think I absorbed the most about business naturally, and how sales, like money, revenue, is the lifeblood of a business, and how that works, like how that relates to your margins, and what you have to take your sales and then minus your expenses, and then hopefully you're left with some profit. And even just learning things like what's a typical profit margin for a business.
What was your first business?
MakerHouse.
Oh, it was, but I thought
you mean business idea?
Or like even whenever like what was the first thing you ever started selling or doing? Like, was it MakerHouse?
Yeah, it was.
I feel like I thought there was earlier, like teenage years. No,
MakerHouse websites.
Other than websites.
Never made any money off the website.
But it was MakerHouse, so that was a pretty big leap. Then.
I think it was pretty lucky to be kind of like a home run out of the gate. And a lot of stars aligned. Like it was very much luck as well. But that was the confidence in like the business side of it, just understanding the economics and the structure of a business and how important sales is, and learning myself the sales skills, which come with confidence in talking to people and pitching ideas, that I could then run with even before we opened the business plan, and getting that in front of people and getting feedback and like, do you understand what this concept is that I've explained to you? Do you like the name? There were other names, you know? Some of the other names were like the Reconstruct Project, and like, oh, that's a little long, you know? But I'm like, oh, but it's cool because like the is like the RE regarding, and then like construct, and then it's a project, you know? It's like,
it's a lot of thoughts up here.
It's like, nope, that's too much.
It's a lot of, You're the only one that's going to have all those thoughts.
Yeah, exactly. Did you notice the sign? Can we unpack our name a little? No.
When people come walk in the store, it's like, hey, wait, did you step back outside?
Right.
Did you look at this? I put a lot of effort into that.
100%. Let me explain to this why you're trying to shop and spend money. I actually want to talk about me.
It's like a good joke, you know. So, you know, the best jokes are the ones you have to explain, right? You're like, this was funny because...
Sadly, I still fall into that trap regularly. Did you hear about these dog trees? Something bone? It's like I just get hung up. It's like, I need to explain.
That's really funny.
Another name was Grow Home, which I actually like as a name, but it was focused on furniture and homewares, which was the original model of MakerHouse.
Right.
And now it's evolved into more gift, which is still like including homewares, and we sell still furniture, but...
And you've got such a variety of things.
It's expanded, right?
From like kids' toys and cars to spoons and everything.
Chocolate, a lot of great food, preserves. We've got like birdhouses.
Right. Anything that can be made.
Thousands of products.
Anything that can be made.
The common thread is it's all Canadian made.
Right.
A lot of it is small batch and handmade.
Right.
And it's functional. So it's gifts, but it's not like store gifts, which are like novelty throwaways. It's all you know, stuff that's built to last and be used. But Grow Home would have pigeonholed us into like home and furniture, and MakerHouse is I would say is like portable. You can apply it to lots of different stuff. So going back to the confidence piece, I also feel like I lived a pretty privileged life as like, you know, a white male, healthy, tall, able-bodied. Lots of things that just in society give you breaks that are invisible.
Right.
So I think it's probably something that naturally gives me confidence, because you get opportunities in life when you have privilege like that, and therefore you can see yourself doing things, right? So I think that's kind of important. I definitely think, and going back, I thought at the time, like, this might be harder to pursue, or I might have less belief in people accepting me if I didn't have that kind of privilege. It's sad to say. I'm not saying I chose that. That's
it just is the thing that happened.
Yeah, and I'm not like a silver spoon, like Ivy League. I wasn't raised in like a rich kid family.
Right.
But I still had some baked in privilege.
Right.
That enabled me to just feel confident that like the world is going to take my ideas and like listen to them. And
why wouldn't they listen to me? look at me.
Exactly.
How could they not?
It's sad to say, but
it is something.
And that I think has changed and is changing. And
I hope so.
Continues to change. But also just getting like, you know, all the demographic pieces aside, I had a very supportive mom who just encouraged me, like, you know, do what makes you feel good, and the rest will kind of fall into place if you can, you know, take your time. You're young. You don't need to like make $1 million by your 25. Take that time to find out what you want to do. So I started in university studying chemical engineering, and then 2 years in, I'm like, this is way too hard. I actually don't want to be an engineer. I thought like maybe I can just be a teacher, and I'll teach chemistry and math. So I'm going to switch and study philosophy, and I'll get a degree in that with enough like credits to teach math and chemistry. But I actually will hopefully just get to teach philosophy, because that's in a lot of schools now.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
And then I graduated school, and there was no teaching job. So I'm like, I'm just going to work in the real world, and yada, yada, yada. Here we are.
And then, and then create like, and that's the part too that I love, like talking a little bit about. Two things out of that. One is I love that, like, you know, the journey, the messed up journey. I don't think there's a straight line anymore. And I, you know, this winding road, and like allowing yourself to just say, okay, well, I'm going to try this and I'm going to try that. And, you know, there's yeah, I think we used to live in a world where it was like, you know, you went to school, you did this, you did that, you got a job,
Oh my
you
God,
worked
yeah, like, that's
for
like
40 or 50 years,
ago.
and then you know, and then you retired, and then you died.
Yeah.
You know, and now it's like, I feel like, but I feel like that was 50 years ago, but also none of our world has changed to support that, or like the education system, or like, you know, what we hear, we're still sitting there going. So I love telling that
Go
example
to
of
school
like,
and
yeah,
it'll set you up for a
like
good
get
job and like
get a diploma,
maybe you'll get a pension. It's like,
yeah.
no, I won't.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah.
But it's like, and like telling more of those stories. So I love that your story is a bit winding, and you know, you thought maybe over here and there. But and then the second thing out of that, I thought, because this kind of relates to my story too. You know, so if you went into college and you were thinking about, you know, what you wanted to do,
Yeah.
and then failure probably hit you. Or not failure, but like
yeah,
you had self-doubt of
I was
like,
pretty
I don't want to do
anxious
this.
when I was trying to make that switch, especially because, like, you know,
Yeah.
your parents are pushing you and financially supporting you.
Right.
You're like,
If you're lucky,
are
hopefully your
you
parents
okay
are-
if I make this switch? Right.
Yeah. So to walk me through what that looked like, because I think that's an important part of any creative story, is you're going to get met with failure a lot. You know, and it's like, how do you deal with failure? Like walk me through that first time you hit failure, and then like, how did you deal with it? How do you deal with it now?
Yeah, it's probably more relevant to give more current examples, because I've had enough recent failures, but yeah, going back, I just remember the anxiety of like recognizing my grades weren't keeping up, and I wasn't really failing, but I'm like, if the trend line keeps up, then next semester maybe.
And you probably hadn't failed up until that point. Like you know, like school, you know.
I was okay at school. I was always like maybe like a 70s student.
Right.
And then the last 2 years of high school, I just turned on the jets. I'm like, I guess I gotta get into a school here.
Right.
And like, my best teachers in high school were my chemistry teacher and my philosophy teacher. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll pick the one that's hardest to get into.
Right.
And then I can always fall back in the other one. And that's exactly what ended up happening. It was like, oh, I can transfer backwards. You know, it'd be harder to move from philosophy into engineering. So,
right. Shoot for the stars.
Yeah. And actually, I always had that mentality from a teenage perspective of like, I want to do as many jobs as possible, because I always want to know that if shit hits the fan and I hit rock bottom, the next rung down is like my first job ever. That's the last rung at the very bottom. And I was refereeing hockey at 13 years old. So I can always rely on that.
You can always go back and do that.
100%. Or you work in a grocery store. You're like, yeah, I know how to do the checkout thing, and I can always do that. So I'm like, great, I'm employable at these things, and I will never hit below that on the the totem
That's
pole,
an interesting concept. That's something that I think, oh man, actually, I love that you just said that, because that's something that I'm like, you don't, like, if you want to be creative and you want to venture out and try something on your own, do it for a year. Nothing says you have to do it forever.
Oh, I would always put a year in, a year and a half, and then be like, okay, I've hit 80% of what I'm going to get out of this. And the next 20% is going to take 5 or 10 years. And I'm young. Let's go try something. I don't know if this is forever for me. Something else might be better. MakerHouse is the first job I ever had for more than 2 years. Because I was always putting on new hats, like seeing if they fit.
Do you think you can do that? So I run into this problem all the time. Can you do that? So you did that when you were young. Can you do that when you're older?
100%. Yeah. It might be more challenging in some ways because, well, you might have more responsibilities. Like your own like financial dynamic plays a big part in that, because if you have, you know, a nice stable job, people get the golden handcuffs with like the pension or the government job, and that's hard to leave. I did leave the government job in my 20s, and it was because I had more flexibility, I think, in my responsibilities. I could be like, I'm giving up a great job for an okay job in a whole new field of sales where it's more like commission based, performance based. And if it doesn't work out, then I have the cushion. I could maybe go back to the government, or I could fall back to the rung previous to that, which was the nonprofit sector. Or I could go back to the sandwich shop that I worked at.
Do you know some makers that have you would maybe know this story more than most, but do you know any makers who had a full-time job who like had started as a part-time maker and then like transitioned and now is full-time maker?
Oh, hundreds of them.
Hundreds of them. Do you hear that, folks?
Yeah.
It can be like, that's where I think it's true too. I think a lot of people think like, oh, I have to quit my job full-time. And like, I'm going to lose all these benefits and stuff. And I was like, no, you don't have to do that.
No.
You can just make small things, you know, and then slowly over time change your life, you know.
Yeah, tons of our makers start as a side hustle.
Amazing.
And it gives you the chance to do it without a lot of risk, right? Because you have stable income from your day job. There are challenges to it because you can only grow so far. You can only do so much with limited hours, right? You might only have like 10 or 15 hours a week to put into it. Side hustles would also be really difficult if you had, again, family responsibilities outside of your day job. So it's probably one of those things that is a bit easier when you're younger, not impossible when you're older. But in that time, as a side hustler, you're just going to want to be probably more efficient. If you are thinking about it as something you want to grow into a full-time business, then you have to think of the best use of your time. You can't just be necessarily focused on like all the fun creative stuff. That would be a hobby. That's acceptable.
And that's great.
That's great.
Keep your hobby.
And people don't have to turn hobbies into businesses.
Right.
If it makes you happy to do it and sell it, like if it doesn't ruin the fun, then you should probably look at turning it into a business because then you could love what you're doing for work. But if you're unhappy at the other job, you know, like I think that's the thing that I get all the time. I'm like, oh, I really love doing these things, but I'm really unhappy over here. And I'm like, well, then don't do this over here. Just do this. And it's like, oh, but if I turn that into, and I think I know what you're about to say. Because you know my wife said
exactly.
And for her, it started out with baking because she'd always like bring awesome stuff to the office or, you know, make stuff for people's birthdays. And every time it's like, oh, you could sell these and you need to have a business. And let's think of some cool names for your new bakery. And she just gets anxious about it because she's like, that doesn't sound fun. She did some orders for birthday cakes or whatever. And it wasn't ever as fun for her as it would be for free. So that, you know, it was always just a joke. It was never something that would really happen that she wanted to do as a business. And then she got into more like artwork and calligraphy, and this is where which was also
amazing.
Yeah, and you've got some of her work, and you're someone who's like bought that work from her.
She's the second most bought person in the studio,
which is crazy because she's not like at all a full-time artist.
No, but we have her art the most. Second most,
which is like a huge compliment. So. But she refuses to take that as like a sign that she needs to do more of it.
Yeah, I know.
She did try though. She had a like more of a stationary business, shooting cards and stuff like that we sold in the store. But again, just didn't have the drive to make it a business, and that's okay.
And that's totally okay.
Yeah,
I guess.
Like I'm still not giving.
I'm still not done yet. And actually, it's funny too. Even the baking stuff, I was like, man, every time. But so, you can't speak for your wife, but do you think if
how can we get her to open a business?
if she just had to bake
and not run a business, would she do it? And would more people do it? So and here's maybe a better question for you, a follow-up question. Have you ever had two makers like meet in the store and like work together, or have you heard of that story? Where it's like, I'm going to do the design and I'm going to do the business part or whatever, because I think that exists that people don't think about sometimes. And I'm like, you can do that. Like, you can find a partner that's really good at timetables and, you know, graphs and math and exactly. And you can make, you know. Find complementary skills. We've had that for sure. I've seen that go both ways, where it works out really, really well, and where it you know, turns into a dumpster fire.
Crashes and burns.
So if you do go that route, which this reminds me of something that I think has been like foundational to my success and to MakerHouse's success, is being resourceful. If you're someone who wants to run a business or grow your creative passion into a business, then you need to be resourceful, or you should look at how you can become more resourceful. And that can be something as simple as like using an app like Canva for graphic design, or there's probably something better than that now. Or building out partnerships and community that are complementary to you, and it's a bit of quid pro quo where you're promoting them, they're promoting you. That's easy stuff. Like, hey, can I share something on Instagram? Can we do a giveaway together? To more of a formal business relationship where it's like, we're partners. And if you get to that level, you just got to make sure your ducks are in a row, that everything's on paper, expectations are clear. So resourcefulness is so key. Do not try to do everything yourself. As soon as possible, find someone you trust that you can afford to hand things off to. And I don't mean like volunteer either. Like I do mean pay, because that is something that will sustain.
Right.
And if it's within your expenses as a business and you're still profitable, then you're not going to worry next year about like, do I still have that volunteer, or are they actually really upset with me because I keep asking them for volunteering and like maybe I promised them it might become a paid thing and it's not happening. So the more sustainable you can make those relationships, the better.
And probably don't be afraid to I think some people too are like, oh, but I need that $2. I was like, yeah, but do you need that $2, or could you just could you have $1, you know?
Right.
And could you give that $1 away? Like,
and what would it,
you know, and
save
like,
you in time?
Yeah, and like,
away?
I don't think people really fully understand that aspect of it, where it's like, did you when was the first time like you took a paycheck out of MakerHouse? Like,
well,
you probably did a lot for a while, but then when you started hiring people,
it was thankfully within the first 6 months, but it wasn't within like the first 3 months,
right.
Where you're just kind of laying out and hoping that the sales come back. But we started during the holiday season, so the sales did come back within that first few months.
Right, which was both smart and dumb, I think, right?
Yeah.
Like I remember, like that would be a lot.
Yeah.
But also great.
Yeah, it was definitely a good call, because the worst thing would have been to be like, oh, we started in like April and it's been dead for 3 months, and like this pop-up to permanent is now closed. We're going back to an e-commerce website.
Right.
So
pop up to permanently closed.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
But that didn't happen, so that's good.
Getting a boost, you know? It's like when you're playing Mario Kart and you hit one of those arrows, you're like, little boost right out of the gate.
For all you Mario players out there.
That's right. Whereas if you're starting in a slower season, you're not going to get that. And you're going to wonder, like, is this it? And I learned pretty early on that Christmas was half of our annual sales, which still blows my mind.
Right.
And
you could be open for 11 months and then 10 months. It's like,
wild.
These 2 months we shop.
We basically lose money keeping the lights on for like 8 months, and then we make money for 4 months, gradually building up to like an obscene amount of money in 1 month. And then we're like, oh, okay, I guess it's been a good year. But that whole time for leading up to December, we're like, well, we've really wagered a lot on Christmas. And the back is stacked full of products, and we've got our marketing plans.
Ready for you.
Hope Christmas happens again this year. And I kind of hate that, honestly. I am not a big fan of like just capitalism, modern, consumer culture. I never really wanted to have a business that's that leveraged to a pagan Christian holiday that's turned into like a Coca-Cola shop fest. But that's what it is, and I'm not alone. I know that.
No, not at all.
We've all kind of hedged our bets there. Yeah. It's like that's one reason why it keeps happening every year, is everybody's like on it. But it's a huge time of year for us. So I kind of forget what the question was that prompted this discussion. So
I don't know. We're here now. It's good. We're here now. I think I was talking about like partnerships and like that you don't have to do everything yourself.
Oh,
like,
like
if like as a good example, like if your wife could just bake, would it make it easier?
Yeah. So I think you'd get her attention by saying like, oh, could you just bake? But then she'd quickly realize that like this cake is an order, and if I mess something up, I might need to redo it, or you know what, I actually wouldn't do it this way if I wanted to do it. So you might lose some elements of like the creative control, or just add in elements of anxiety of like performance anxiety, even though she's exceptionally talented, right?
Sure. Do you think you lose that over time? Because I know for me, like there's always the imposter syndrome, which was also something you talked about on the Happy Ever Crafter on that podcast. And I think that's something I love talking with creatives about, because I don't think it ever goes away. But how do you deal with it? Or does it go away?
I think it's like fake it till you make it, for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
So I think I also learned in my 20s that like everybody's faking it till they make it, and like a lot of people are just kind of like, yeah, I've got a degree, and so that gets my foot in the door, and now I'm like recognized and people respect me for this area of knowledge
because I have a piece of paper.
Yeah, a lot of the time, which is like
that I read some books.
Another kind of dumb structural cultural thing. you know, this there for good reason. I get it, but it's like there should be more than that.
Yeah.
And I certainly, you know, I have a philosophy degree, so I had to really sell myself early on. You know, the joke at Queens where like students are awful to each other was like, you're gonna work at McDonald's for the rest of your life. It's
Right.
Like, great. Well, I have a $40,000 debt to pay off, so that's gonna take a little while. But yeah, just selling myself based on, you know, skills, character, attributes, and then if there's something new, feeling at least confident that like, you know, if someone else can do this, I can probably do it.
Right.
I've seen people who
Right.
Not to judge, but may not even have the same like abilities I have, and they're able to do it.
You're very kind.
Yeah.
My saying is, you know,
I've seen Sean have a podcast, and like
I
know how Sean is, so I can do a podcast.
So my saying, without not related to that example, has always been, you know, dumber people have done it than I have.
Yeah, okay.
Not related.
I love that saying.
They're not related.
I love that saying, and I love that you're the one who said it. But that's true.
Yeah,
That's
it is true. Like,
you can
you
say
know,
that in your inside voice.
Well, and people
it should give you confidence to try the thing.
Yeah.
'Cause it guarantee it's true.
And people with all
Dumber
different
people have
lives of
done it.
experience.
And
you
they
know,
have
and
more
it's like,
confidence than you.
yeah.
But you should have the confidence.
Why not? You know?
Yeah.
And I think it goes back,
Because you're not dumb.
if we take it all the way back to one of the earlier parts too, it's like, you know, also people don't care. Like, you know, just, if you just stay in your own lane and do
what's
it,
the worst?
Yeah.
That whole thing. What's the worst thing that could
what's
happen?
the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you definitely should be asking if you're feeling anxiety about something.
Yeah.
Like you should always be asking them, what's the worst that could happen here? You
And
know?
can you work on that? Like, I think you know, it's easy to sit and say that, but it's something that I've practiced a lot. Like, I've had to say, what is the worst that can happen? You know, and on one of the episodes, and I forget what number it was, but I had Lana Dingwall on here, and Lana Dingwall's an awesome friend of mine, great coach.
Seen her on social media too.
Yeah. And she said something on that podcast that I thought was really great. She was saying, you know, when I was thinking about like all the risks and all my fears as I move into new things, I had to stop myself from doing that. And I had to like be like, well, what's the risk of not, like, what if I don't do this?
Right.
Like, what if I stay here? What's the risk of staying here? You know, I become unhealthy,
That's
like
true.
this, that, the other thing. And I was
Or
like,
have all these regrets.
yeah, and you have to like, I think we have to get better at practicing that type of thinking. And it's like, oh my God, I have so much anxiety for the future. What if I make this change? So it's like, yeah, but what if you stay here?
Right. How does that play out?
You know, how does that play out? And like, you know, or what if it all just works out? Like, did you ever do any of that?
Yeah.
Like, what if it works out? Like,
Yeah, I think I kind of went in with maybe like a naive sense that like this is just a great idea, and like it's like the time and the place for a curated collection of handmade and locally made items. And you know, Etsy had been booming for a few years. We lived in Toronto for 5 years before we moved to Ottawa, and I saw like all the, you know, Live Edge Table Market and Harvest Tables, like the furniture side of it. They were all blowing up, right? And I moved to Ottawa, and I'm like, there's not as much of that happening here. But there is this big craft market, like craft shows were really blowing up here.
Right.
So I'm like, someone needs to bring this to Main Street.
everybody's lugging all this stuff every weekend, and they're setting up their booth. And you're like, what if I just give you a booth every day?
Right, yeah.
What if I set up your booth?
days a year.
Yeah, that's true, eh?
So there was probably a bit of just like optimism.
So I call it ignorant belief. I'm like, can you just develop ignorant belief? You know, it's like, it's going to work. Or it's not, nothing bad's going to happen. Like that's, you know, but I think you have to practice.
But also thinking through again, like if it doesn't work, then what would I do next?
Right.
And how much money would I lose? And, so I was comfortable with all of that, you know, like I put in less than $100,000 out of the gate, and I had a 3-month lease, and I wasn't on the hook beyond that.
Right.
And worst case, I would have been like, okay, that model didn't work, but I still have this brand, and I still have whatever community we've built up.
Right.
So I can decide to move that, or try it again in some other format.
Yeah.
But we've had failures. Like, definitely lucky that the business model as a whole has been successful. But then that naive optimism goes into like, well, we should be able to expand on this and branch out from this. So a couple of ways we've tried that, and by the way, like none of them have worked. Like
Yeah.
all I've
Yeah,
learned is
yeah.
like stick with your bread and butter, bud. Like
Right.
don't try to expand too much into like new area. If you have something that
Sure.
works, I should just be investing all that money into this.
Right.
But what we tried was a pop-up down at the Biower Market.
Right.
We got offered through the Beaver Tails folks, Grant and Pam Hooker, who founded Beaver Tails, and they're always trying new things and trying to build up the community, especially in the Biower Market, which has been so good to them.
Yeah.
So they built and invested in 2 big permanent outdoor stalls, and they're like, we want you to be in one.
Right.
So we signed on to have an outdoor version of MakerHouse, and we launched in September.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
tourist season was over. And
Yeah,
we're
right.
like, well, we'll probably get a bump in December. Like, it was really slow down there. Particularly, like, traffic was okay, but people were always on their way somewhere.
Right,
They're either going
right.
to work or they're going to a restaurant reservation or something like that. And they're not looking in the fall or winter to stand outside a stall and
Right,
buy a
browse
t-shirt or
and-
something.
Yeah.
So
It's really cold out here. I'd like to buy a t-shirt.
exactly, yeah. We didn't even get a Christmas bump down there,
Sure.
which you would expect in like a retail operation. So it fizzled out, and by February we had pulled the plug on it. But I got a lot out of it. Like,
Right,
I
yeah.
call it my, I don't know, I can't remember how much we lost, but I mean like $50,000 MBA, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
Because I learned what wouldn't work
Right.
to expand in a new store, and elements that we have in our Hintonburg store that just didn't exist down there. For example, indoor heat.
Right. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Might be important
Who knew?
during the winter.
Yeah.
Duh. So I probably didn't do enough homework.
It's funny.
On
Yeah,
that
but what a great lesson. And like, again, like it didn't sink you. It didn't sink your ship.
No, got out
And that's-
before it.
I always think that that's an important thing for creators to think about too, and creatives in general, of like, don't sink your ship, but you can try things. Like
Yeah.
try things and you know, but leave a dinghy out in the water, you know?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
we don't need to, what's that famous example of like they burned all their ships and that was it, and then they had to go and battle like
Right.
some battle there, and I was like, don't do that. That's
Sounds
dumb.
like
That's
the
a-
Vikings. I don't
it's a
know
bad-
that story, but it sounds like something the Vikings would do.
it's a bad lesson. Don't do that. Just leave a dinghy, you know?
Yeah.
Allow yourself to, if you need to retreat, go back, get in the dinghy. You can come back tomorrow with a
Yeah.
bigger, better ship and
And
more
kind
people.
of know what
you know?
your trigger points are too.
Yeah.
Because if it's like an investment as well, like for anybody who invests in stocks or whatever,
Yeah.
knowing like what would be your sell point to get out before
yeah,
you've
yeah,
lost too
right.
much, or on the flip side, what's your exit strategy to get out when things are going well?
Yeah.
So for the Biower Market, I had a sense of how much we were losing each month, and
Yeah.
also a sense of like, what would that money be doing if we put it back into the Hintonburg store,
Right.
in inventory or marketing, for example,
Yeah, yeah.
and so knowing when to get out before it could potentially sink your
Right.
main ship, your battleship.
Yeah. We don't want that.
And I've had that a couple times where we're trying different expansion things where it's like, okay, they're not working on their own, and the losses there could eventually impact what we're trying to do
Yeah.
in Hintonburg. So it might be time to pull the plug.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
So I do not have a Midas touch. I'm not able
Yeah,
to just
right.
recreate success.
Right.
So really focused right now on our bread and butter,
Right.
the retail store.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about craft change. That's a very
Oh, yeah.
important part of your story. And also with craft change, you've sold a lot of products, but I also know that a big part of your store and one of the things that I love about it is the story of making. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that. So what is craft change? People can go read it on the website, but like, what does craft change mean to you?
So, and what Craft Change is we give 2% of our overall sales to different nonprofit organizations. It started out with quarterly partners. So we'd pick, the Parkdale Food Center for the Christmas quarter, and they'd always get the biggest donation. But then we'd work with like the Ottawa Tool Library for another quarter, or Hijinks. So lots of great organizations that some of your audience would definitely be familiar with, because you're also supportive of them. And you may have even introduced me to Hijinks back in the day, because we've been friends for a long time. So that's what it is. It's evolved more into like we'll pick a cause that's more current. Like during COVID, we were giving to like the food delivery programs. Parkdale had one from the food center, but there were other ones in town. Or we're donating to like the hospital foundation for you know, like protective equipment,
Sure.
Or Black Lives Matter became a huge cause.
Right.
And we're like, yeah, we support that. And so we're going to donate through that cause. So giving ourselves more flexibility. And then it also evolved into product-based giving. So people buy the orange shirts for every live or every child matters. And we donate 100% of the sales from that item to the Orange Shirt Society. And also we have a native land gift box, which is all Indigenous curated products, and even named by our Indigenous makers. And that's donated in part to like Art for Aid, which is sending art supplies up north for the Inuit population. So finding products that people can be like, I know this one's all going to charity, and it makes me feel better about buying Indigenous made product, for example. Or we have a Pride gift box for LGBTQ organizations. What does it mean to me? Well, it's baked into the DNA of the company, and it basically makes it feel like we're more than a commercial private enterprise. We're closer to a social enterprise that's giving back. So we already try to have a model that's sustainable and socially oriented with locally made products and supporting, giving a platform for hundreds of local makers, connecting customers locally with things that they would want to buy and support through an easier channel than individually finding these 200 makers, and doing events like workshops, giving a platform for those makers, or beer tastings, which is a win-win scenario as we discussed.
We did. We'll go back to it. We'll end the same way we started. Get your customers drunk.
The craft change is kind of like the cherry on top.
Right.
It's like when we do good, we give back, and the community gains.
It thrives. It all
grows from that. So we've been able to give. We just crossed over $200,000 last year. So in our first 8 years, we were able to hit that 200,000 mark, and it feels great. I can't wait till one day it crosses $1 million raised and donated. That comes from my mom. My mom was always working in the nonprofit sector, always giving back, just like one of those people who's just looking out for other people, making a difference. Probably underpaid, overworked, but passionate, and ahead of the curve in terms of like micro loans for small businesses that otherwise couldn't access bank loans, and she taught me a lot. So that's her legacy living on in my business.
That's cool. That's awesome. Okay, I have two last questions. One that I think is really important. I've watched MakerHouse grow from early days and to where it is now.
Thanks for all your support.
It's been super fun. But early days, and we had many chats about, finding that balance. And I think you found a good balance now of like, healthy balance of running store, creating stuff. I think you do have to like pour yourself in there for a while, but I think now you're kind of coming out the other side of like actually finding a good, healthy balance. And talk to us about like how important that is and what you do as a creative and as a maker and as a business owner. What does that balance look like for you now? And like, how do you come to peace with that balance?
It's a good question. Early on, I was able to put in 60, 80-hour work weeks. I didn't have kids. I had a very understanding wife who supported the whole thing and knew what it would take to get it off the ground. And then, 5 years in, I guess actually 3 years in, we had our first kid. 5 years in, we had our second kid. And I was so lucky to already have a successful business. So we had a customer base, we had a revenue base, and things were growing organically, and I had an amazing team. So this doesn't come without, again, being resourceful, finding fantastic people. I feel like we've built a really good work culture. We also like make sure we're paying more than minimum wage for entry level jobs in retail, which is, let's be honest, it's kind of a shitty sector. You're not you're generally not paid very well in retail, and we tried to raise that bar as much as we could as a small business, and we continue to try to do that. We added benefits a few years ago, so things, creating a good, fun workplace culture allows you to build a team that sticks around, can grow in their responsibilities, can grow in their own compensation, and eventually, I was, instead of doing 100 different things, I'm doing 10 different things, and then one day I'm doing like 2 different things because I'm handing things off and I'm paying. Again, I'm not keeping that money in my pocket, working myself 6 feet underground. I'm able to actually spend time with my family, my kids.
What a luxury.
So yeah, what a luxury and a trade-off of I don't need to be a millionaire. I make the same amount of money each year from my salary that like our top employee makes.
Right.
But I also own the business, so I have this asset that
but you give yourself time.
Later on,
Actually, that's really key for me, and that's something we talk about a lot here. Is like, you know what, you don't need to like. What would you even? You don't need to make $1 million. What about time? Like, you have so much good time now.
Yeah.
That you could do this with me.
Exactly. This is one of the coolest things I've ever done. And actually, family life is so much fun. I've been building snow forts the last couple winters with my kids in our yard. And one of the coolest things I think I've ever done, like in my new era, my 40s, 40 plus now years old, and I have that work-life balance. I went around collecting Christmas trees after the holidays last year, and I freeze them like standing in our yard. Okay. So I built this whole forest in our yard of Christmas trees, and then shoveling hills and making slides and tracks I can drag my kids around on. That to me is like one of the coolest things that I do in the wintertime, and I wouldn't be able to do that if I
see a tall, lanky man taking a tree out of your backyard. Don't panic.
Dragging it down the street.
Just let him do it.
Yeah, I had like my bike and like a trailer on the back and just like 5 trees
in the middle of winter.
Yeah,
of course you did.
And my kids loved it. Like they're like, this is the coolest thing. And like we have our own forest. Yeah.
I got my bicycle. I got my trees.
If you want to see the psychopath side of that, it's in the spring because then you're stuck with all these trees that are all dried out, and I got to go out there with my chainsaw, like full Chevy Chase National Lampoons, and I'm just cutting these trees down in my yard.
Do you have can we get a picture of that?
Can we get in the curb? The city garbage people are like, what are all these decapitated trees doing out here in March?
Yeah. Oh, they're just in my backyard.
Yeah, exactly. We were enjoying them for a few more months.
I only grew them. Yeah. My house was just full of Christmas.
Yeah. I overdid it. I had almost 20 trees last year, and it was way too much to deal with. Yeah.
Can I flash? We're gonna flash a little picture up here.
Yeah, I'll
just for so if you're watching on YouTube, just now's the time to click in.
I'll send you the overdid it picture from last year, and then this year I just put our own one tree in the backyard.
Okay. So wow, that's a lot of self-restraint.
Yeah, I know. Dial it back.
Oh my God, if that doesn't define, so for listeners who don't know, that defines to me who Gareth Davies is. It's like, I could put one tree. But what if I just put 100 trees? And I went and I got my bike and I did this and I pulled them all in. That kind of defines you a little bit.
I kind of scoped out the art. I'm like, I could put one here. I could put one here. I could put one here. I'm like, I can put one there to build up a pile of snow on top of it. Because it's hard to build a hill from scratch.
That's really funny, actually. I'm learning this now. I didn't even know this was a thing. And now all I can do is think about...
we're digging tunnels.
All I could do is think about like how the business, like you're like, let's open up a little store as a pop-up, and then maybe we'll open up one here and there. And it's like, oh God, it's like, that's a funny pattern. We don't need to dive into that, but that's a funny pattern.
I like it. I live it,
No, it's great. It's great. And now he has one tree.
Yeah, you gotta find your limits and then hit the line, figure out where you want to retreat back to.
I like
Where's your comfort zone?
It's good.
Yeah,
that's good though. Actually, that's a really good too, because I often talk about pushing boundaries, and I often don't talk about the push the boundaries. That's fine. That's great. But then come back to you don't have to keep pushing boundaries forever. You can.
I kind of realized one tree got the same effect as 50.
Right.
For like the kids that are like, there's a tree, there's a forest. That's a forest. I'm like, I don't need to drag 15 trees, freeze them into the ground, and then cut them all down in the spring.
Right.
Great.
What a great realization you had.
I'll spend more time drinking hot chocolate.
What a great realization you had. Oh my God, that's amazing. I love that that's something that I just discovered as well on this podcast. I didn't know that was a thing that you did. That's great. Yeah, Thank you for sharing that lesson.
You can help me dig some tunnels.
I'll bring a tree. Do I have to bring a tree?
You could like really whip them over the jumps. They love it. It's great.
All right, that's good. Okay, well, barring that, I want to wrap up. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me. It's
been so good. But I do have one last question for you. I'm just thinking about creativity as a whole, and like, what's one thing that we could do better as society, business owners, as other creatives who are actually making a living? What's something that we could do as creatives to help other creatives succeed more?
That's a really good question. I think more businesses are thinking this way of like, if you've got space, It's probably a win-win to leverage that to display artwork. You see places like Union 613, like a restaurant, and they're known for having great like cycling of artwork on the walls that you can buy as well. I don't think they take a commission, but often a business will. Right. So it helps like, support the, pay the rent a little bit. So provide a platform. Like if you've got a space, great. If you don't, maybe you just have like a voice on social media, right? Or like connect the dots between like a friend that might enjoy this artwork. So just look at like every little opportunity, Yeah. It's like the Jane Goodall quote of like, every day your actions are going to have an impact. You're going to make a difference somehow in the world. Little, big, whatever. Right. So you get to choose, right? And you might not always feel like it, but you're going to be able to make a difference. So just look for those little opportunities and connect the dots.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, sir.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Sean.
Appreciate it.
Do more cool shit, everybody.
Get out there and do more cool shit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Holy shit, you've made it this far. That's right, you're ready. Get in there. Get your stuff in a store right now. Get out there. Gareth and I yell at you. Go do that cool shit. And part of that cool shit is making some money. That's right, we need to not be afraid to make some money, especially as creatives, as artists, as makers, as creators, whatever that is. If you are making a product or selling a service as a creative, I think we're often told that we... you have to live poor, right? The poor artist, right? The struggling poor artist. You don't have to. You can make a ton of money. You can make a very good living. You can make yourself some time. And I think we covered a lot of those things. And I was so grateful for Gareth to be able to spend that time having that conversation with me, because I think he and the store and the team that he's working with, including his wife, including a bunch of friends that have worked with him in the past, have really bolstered a creative community here in the city, as well as just all over Canada. And if you haven't had a chance yet, please go check out MakerHouse, because you gotta go and take a look at some of the things that people are making. And I hope that you took a lot of inspiration from it. So go to MakerHouse.com, check out some of the cool stuff that's there, and absorb some of that stuff, right? Like absorb what other people are making and know that you too can be that person, right? You too can step into that realm and make some of these things, right? It doesn't have to be other people, right? So I appreciate you guys, and I hope that you guys are doing well. I appreciate all of you. It's been an awesome time doing this podcast up until now, and there's lots more to come. I'm so excited. I hope you guys have an awesome freaking week ahead of yourselves. I hope you guys go out, you create, you do all kinds of more cool shit. And until the next time, my friends, have an awesome freaking day. Thank you so much. Go make some more cool shit.
Get down to it.